So my project that I did was on new media technology, and I studied with a group or some groups of rappers or assistant artistic poetry artists in Bogota, Colombia for a year. And so today I'm going to be talking about the techniques that I used in studying how they have created sort of their rap network, because it's a transnational network. And we'll kind of, I guess, look at some of the methodologies that I chose to use and the body of literature that I'm taking some of these studies from. So Dr. Brown said that learning takes place in ecological niches whereby people know, learn, transform, and reproduce in an ongoing condition of deliberate transmission, production of new conditions, culture, and con-associates. In order to get in touch with processes of global media flows, interaction, and wealth generation, it's important to trace interconnectivity through their nodes of interaction. And in this regard of interactive, kind of open theoretical model can be helpful. So here I've chosen to use actor network theory. I'm going to go a little bit out of order. So there's this larger, broader body of literature known as social shaping technologies literature. And this is kind of some literature that I discovered when I was studying in the UK at the LSE. It's something that we use to discuss issues of technology and lock-in and user choice once you start using a Mac or you start using a PC or you start using Fruity Loops or you start using any sort of specific software with hardware. It kind of locks you into a particular set of choices, and then you may or may not be able to go back and undo those. And so I wanted to kind of find out, and also another issue sort of dealing with this type of literature is something called the digital divide. And the digital divide, are you guys familiar with that term? Yeah. It's when certain people don't have access to certain types of technology that other people have access to. So I wanted to investigate this issue in regards to producers of music in Bogota, Colombia, because Bogota is kind of like, if you look at neo-Marxist literature on media production, they would say, there's a traditional core and then there's a periphery. So you have the core of like European and countries in the US and maybe even Japan or something that may have more technological infrastructure, may have better music production studios, and therefore may be able to create a higher quality of sound, which limits access to producers from other places in the periphery from not being able to do this. And I wondered if that had changed with the introduction of new media technologies, and a lot of kind of anthropologists were asking this question as well. So this is sort of a new type of actor network analysis, I guess, that we're starting to do more often in the anthropological fields in the United States. There are still maybe some questions about how effective it is at representing economic power and social power. So a lot of theorists suggest trying to combine maybe actor network theory with communities of practice theory to kind of round out the power issues, or to look at other SST models from like industrial sociology or that kind of literature. So actor network theory was developed specifically to take ethnographic systematic study of science and innovation. And this can hopefully inform a larger discussion of what's happening with media technology and globalization, discovering the entrepreneurs, the interestment process, the goal attainment strategies, and group maintenance structure of this actor network theory is supposed to allow us to understand how the group is producing their cultural products. So some of the people who have picked up on some of this actor network theory and studying new media have started kind of recently, and I would just kind of breeze through this because I want to kind of get to my own stuff. But basically, new media has been studied sociologically with questionnaires and things like that. The problem, of course, is that we cannot know exactly how people learn to use these technologies if they're disconnected from actually observing the process of watching young people do these things. If youth don't speak other languages and things like that, it's kind of important to be right there in the moment to see how do you converse with somebody who doesn't speak the same language with you about music, right? How would you overcome that barrier? And so these are some of the things that maybe early studies alluded to. These things were happening, but didn't get specific on the details of how that's going on. So some of the questions that I want to ask, today I'm focusing on just one of my rap groups, and my question is, how did they make music in Colombia? How did they come together as a niche? How did they maintain their group? And what kind of technologies do they use? What types of barriers do they encounter? I used a purposeful selection sample here. I worked with this rap group over a long period of time. And this network that I'm going to present to you is made up of both technology and actors. Actor network theory emphasizes that you kind of collapse the divisions between human beings and social technologies and sort of just treat them all as the same thing. So I tried to do that here. These are just some of the details of, like, this was a multi-sided ethnographic research project because, like I said, my informants kind of span parts of the globe. They're based in Bogota, Colombia, but they have members in New York, Geneva, London. They have schools that they run, or like hip-hop workshops that they run in schools in Nigeria, Switzerland, and in Kenya as well. So they are quite a large group of people. And so today I'm going to present my data sort of in this kind of a process, and hopefully you guys can follow along. So the entrepreneurs really are people who identify themselves. Everybody kind of self-references these guys, and they're easy to identify. In my particular group, the entrepreneurs were Hernando and William. William was actually the first person that I met here in New York. He actually was a gang member in Harlem, and he was arrested and deported back to Bogota and in 2007, and he's been able to actually have his rights reinstated, so he can travel back here now and do concerts and go on tour. And Hernando is his partner down in Bogota that he met in 2007, and they formed the rap group, the Big Time Mafia. This is kind of their global network. This is a map of all the places that they have connections to. So they are mostly here. They have about 6 core members here. They interact regularly with people in New York and Miami. Their main producer, Genius, actually lives in Paris 6 months out of the year and lives in Bogota 6 months out of the year, so travels back and forth. This has helped break some barriers with technology lock-in issues. There were a couple of times where the group wanted to use a certain type of microphone, and they were saying that they couldn't import it because of trade restrictions. And it was hard to follow up whether there was actually still trade restrictions on some of the technology because there's been so many free trade acts passed, or whether they were just having a hard time getting somebody to ship it to them or somebody to be able to buy it. But they could always overcome these technological barriers by just asking Genius to bring the equipment from France. So that's one of the ways in which these guys are just kind of like using globalization, increased travel, trade, communications to overcome maybe some other traditional barriers that they might normally have. The rappers have been on concert tours to these different places, and like I said, they have friends in all of these locations. So how do they stay together? How do they interest their members? All right. Many of the core members of the group have been affiliated with a street gang that espouses the values of honor, unity, fraternity, knowledge, loyalty, and honesty. We have been kind of hearing a little bit about family all day and how, people who are sometimes, from marginal spaces and things like that are maybe looking for surrogate families. And Thomas Ward, and there are a few other people who have studied this kind of gang activity in the past and found that these surrogate families actually create a very strong sense of belonging and a strong sense of bonds to groups who become members of them. So this is the case with this group that I found. All of the members of this group also respectively come from harsh backgrounds. So whether they're coming from New York or they're coming from Paris or they're coming from Bogota, a lot of them have been born in difficult situations and have been able to become socially mobile through this organization, and that's a big source of pride as well for the group and keeps them sort of like interested in helping to promote the activities of the group. When new people join the group that have to show a dedication to these values and principles that I talked about, as well as to promise to uphold the ideas of the group, which are rigor, lucha, respeto, which means hard work, to struggle against the system, and to respect each other in that process. So here is a map that I made of sort of the way that the big time mafia is set up and how they operate. They have a couple of different businesses that they operate. They sort of have this debt collection agency that they formed with the help of one of their friends. And so Orlando, William, and Aaron are the three partners that are invested in this debt collection agency. And actually, Aaron, who is a former gang member and has an AA in computer science from Bronx Community College, somewhere I used to teach. And so he has developed this software that helps debt collection agencies just in general be able to kind of like dial the next person, while you're on the phone with the one person. It can kind of judge how the phone call is going and start dialing the next person to come up. So this is actually a type of software that Aaron uses in his own business, but he also sells it to other groups. He was bragging to me that he had sold this to like Harvard. He had sold this to a bunch of other groups trying to collect debts from people who owed them money. And so he's very proud, of his ability to have developed this type of software. So he has gone into business and they profit share off of the business. Aaron is the CFO. And then his two brothers, Vato and T, are also from New York, and they work with him in this business. Aaron hires actually a lot of deportees to work in the debt collection agency, which is kind of interesting because I'm sure they're paying with credit card numbers and stuff like that, which is always good. But Genius is the main producer for Arnando and William. And Arnando and William are the main rappers. Vato also he's like 21 years old, and so he's kind of the new star that they're training, a prodigy of theirs. And he has access to production studios in Bogota, Colombia, as well as in New York. So if they're having some kind of, like I said, technological problem gaining access to anything, like in Bogota, or having sound quality problems, he can a lot of times just take those files to Paris to his friends who work in TV studios and music studios there and kind of work that out and fix it. Then there's a guy in Geneva named China, and he has connections with a guy named Kay, who has a program that he runs in Nigeria doing hip-hop workshops for youth in urban areas. And then Della is in Kenya, and he does a similar type of thing. And the rap group kind of invests money, actually, in helping to put on these programs, and in Switzerland as well, because they like to just kind of have their presence and get out a message to the kids that, like, somebody cares about you. There is, there are people who can relate to your life and what's happening with your hardships and things like that. And they emphasize, again, the values that they have learned through like their own, gang affiliation and like street smarts of how to do business with each other and try to take care of their like fraternal organization that they have founded. Then there's this group known as the Indigenas Netas crew, and they are a group of, like, they started out as graffiti artists, but now they've turned into more graphic designers, and they've designed the clothing line of the Big Time Mafia. They produce all of their clothes within Colombia. They say it's with Colombian national product, and they say it's actually like their way of resisting like the deindustrialization of Colombian factory industry. It's a way of them to support like their own laborers, have their own raw materials, making, Colombian national products to sell to their hip hop fans. And so it's like, you're wearing like real Colombian national products when you buy our clothes. And they have a good rapport with the textile workers. They have clothing stores. They have 2 locations in Bogota, one in Medellin, and then they have retail employees that work at these stores. And it was just amazing to me, when I would like talk to any of these people, I would call, or go do interviews with them. It was always like they would speak the mantras of the group. Kind of again those values that I talked about. So the goals of the group are they want to revolutionize the world through their music. They would like to kind of they talk a lot about sort of redistributive justice. They talk a lot about in their songs like the idea that, people have to work together and build community in order to fight back against the system that sometimes robs people. They have this debt collection agency, like I said, with the 3 main owners. They have a hip-hop clothing brand where they're able to, sell quite a bit of clothes and make money. They make money from their concert tours and selling their music. And then, of course, they're, good at promoting their message through working with children in these various locations. And when I asked them why they actually didn't have any workshops in the United States, because they know quite a lot of people here, they said that our regulatory environment around schools is so intense that they couldn't get one of their associates to be able to teach hip-hop workshops here. They've tried and they just can't get into the schools. So I think that that's unfortunate. But they maintain their group by having kind of this shared repertoire and norms of behavior. Again, I talked about the values that they have. Another thing that I found really kind of interesting is they say this saying firme. Like if you say firme on something, that's like you've signed your name to it. It's written in stone, like you have to follow through with it. You can't go back on it now. So it's almost in a weird way like a contract, like a verbal contract. That's the way you signify that, you're going to do whatever it is that you just said firme to. And then they get their message out on SoundCloud, through their music, in YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. And these are some memes that I took from their Facebook pages. And this is every decision that you make determines the outcome of your life. So be careful with the decisions that you make. And this is saying to take off the mask and be more original, awake up to the world, the fake world that you're living in, and learn to be loyal to yourself. So it's just kind of these messages that again resonate, with their message that I've kind of been talking about. And so this is kind of how they maintain, their global presence in such a big way. So niche actors and technology play a vital role in creating social mobility strategies for actors within various transnational spaces. Like I said, there's evidence, that I have in my data where, these guys are able to overcome issues of technological lock-in. They're able to overcome issues of technology transfer through working together, trading computers, there are some other things that they do as well to get around high costs, prohibitive costs of things. A lot of times they will pirate software and share it with each other. The ontological foundation of this group almost gives the group a religious-like quality. Kind of, I think, maybe in a later chapter of my dissertation, I'm just starting to, get all of this stuff flipped through right now. But this almost creates a modern religious quality. I found a lot of the people that I talked to who were part of the rap group almost felt like the rap group is, they have meetings every Saturday as a group and stuff. So it almost becomes like a church-like institution where the, people who are involved with it kind of revolve around it. All their activities are involved with the organization. And I wonder, if in some way hip-hop can be sort of a little bit of a postmodern sort of sense of values for people who are not really raised in religious environments, that kind of thing. These guys are using travel communications and technology and the fundamentals of globalization to form different types of wealth. And I think that that's really impressive. A lot of you guys know my struggles with neoliberalism and how I like rail against it all the time, but these guys are actually a group that is using the components of neoliberalism and learning how to kind of like strategize around the system of the global economy that presents itself. Anytime they are presented with different barriers, they seem to be able to work together to figure out kind of how to strategize around them. And I think that that's the most interesting thing that these guys have shown me. I have like some really crazy experimental theoretical stuff that I would like to talk about, but we don't have time for that today, so I'll save that for Dr. Wren's office hours.